If an agent can look a president of basketball operations in the eye and say, this is what's going to happen a full year in advance, and then actually make it happen, I've got a question. Does that seem normal to you? Because in any traditional NBA structure, that conversation ends with, you're overstepping, my friend. So let's ask the real question. Does the traditional NBA franchise model even exist anymore? Or is this the model now? May God bless America. Because in the NBA, trades aren't isolated events, they're pressure releases. They're the visible symptoms of power shifts that happen long before the press release hits your phone. By the time a trade becomes public, the real decisions were already made months, sometimes years earlier. That's why the February 4th, 2026 trade that sent Darius Garland to the Clippers for James Harden isn't just a swap, it's a signal flare. And when you zoom out, it looks less like roster tweaking and more like architectural planning, designed to fundamentally reshape the league's balance of power. The idea is simple. LeBron James is lining up one final run, and Cleveland is being prepared for his return. This isn't Rich Paul reacting to circumstances. This is Rich Paul dictating the timeline, not just for his clients, but for an entire franchise. That sounds dramatic, until Rich Paul went on a podcast and said the quiet part out loud.
I sat Darius down and I explained to him, I was like, this is going to be your last year on the Cavs. Very matter-of-factly, because I do things very black and white. I said, that's just the way it's going to be for a number of reasons that I take too long to get into, but that's just my foresight. And I also had the conversation with Kobe Altman, who runs the Cavs. And I said, Kobe, listen, this is what it's going to be. I understand it. The hopes is they go out and they play a great year and they try to contend and then anything short of a championship run, there has to be a change.
Because there's redundancy on the
yeah.
right.
Rich Paul thinks he's so butter. Oh, I spoke to Kobe Altman, by the way, who runs the Cavs. And in case I forgot to mention, he runs the Cavs. Like, get the fuck out of here, weirdo. But I digress. Agents usually operate through leaks, whispers, league sources. Rich Paul didn't do that. He went public. He said he sat Darius Garland down and told him flatly that this would be his last year in Cleveland. No maybe, no we'll see, just a statement of fact. Then he said he had the same conversation with Cavs president Kobe Altman. Not a suggestion, a notification. Anything short of a championship, Paul said, meant the roster had to change because there was redundancy. That word, redundancy, did a lot of work. What makes this shocking isn't the basketball logic. People have debated the Garland-Mitchell fit. What's shocking is the authority behind it. This wasn't an agent advocating flexibility. This was an agent outlining the future and daring the franchise to resist it. That's a direct challenge to the traditional NBA power structure, where the GM makes the decisions and agents respond. What Paul described is something else entirely, a shadow governance model, where agency foresight overrides organizational planning. Traditionally, players hire agents to execute their wishes. Here, the agency manages the portfolio. Garland wasn't told he might be traded. He was told his time was over. And that only makes sense if the next step was already mapped out. There are no coincidences in Cleveland anymore. James Harden's arrival, a short-term, flexible, win-now contract paired with a systematic shedding of long-term money like Garland and DeAndre Hunter, creates the exact conditions needed for a third LeBron James era. This isn't a rebuild, it's coronation prep. Even Paul's phrasing tells the story. I sat Darius down. That's not collaborative language. That's paternalistic, authoritative. It positions the agent, not the player, as the primary strategist of the career arc. And the conversation with Kobe Altman, that wasn't negotiation. That was a memo. Paul effectively told the executive branch of the franchise that the agency had identified a flaw, redundancy, and that a transaction was required. Paul also leaned heavily on one word, foresight. That's not accidental. By claiming he diagnosed the Garland-Mitchell redundancy a year in advance, Paul reframes the trade. Garland wasn't moved because he failed. He was moved because the structure failed, and only the agency could see it coming. On the surface, the Garland trade was sold as basketball logic. Two small, ball-dominant guards, defensive limitations, a capped playoff ceiling. All true, but also all true a year earlier when Cleveland publicly committed to that core. So why now? Because redundancy wasn't the problem, the contract was. Garland's max deal ran through 2028. That contract alone made a LeBron reunion mathematically impossible. If Cleveland wanted to keep Mitchell, extend Mobley, stay under the second apron, and still leave room for a star arrival, something had to give. Garland was the immovable object, but trading him outright would signal a distressed asset. So instead, Rich Paul pulled off the perfect maneuver. James Harden is a financial Swiss Army knife, player option, bird rights, negotiable years, negotiable money. Garland for Harden didn't just change the roster, it converted long-term blockage into short-term control. That's not coincidence, that's planning. And even the venue matters. Paul didn't leak this through reporters. He chose a podcast. Controlled framing, controlled tone. Bypassing traditional journalism allows him to rebrand overstepping as executive thinking. He's not positioning himself as an agent anymore. He's positioning himself as a peer to GMs and owners, talking about redundancy, championship windows, and long-term vision. This isn't just about one trade. It's about who really runs the league now. Because redundancy was the excuse, liquidity was the goal. And Cleveland is just the staging ground. James Harden asking for a trade to Cleveland of all places is wild. Why Cleveland? To team up with Donovan Mitchell? Are the Cavs even real title contenders right now? And unless I missed something, Cleveland over Los Angeles? Yeah, that one needs an explanation. Darius Garland's trade value had dropped sharply and injuries were the main reason why. And by the time the trade happened, Garland had played just 26 games in the 2025-26 season. And here's where it gets interesting. That decline may have actually worked perfectly for Clutch Sports. If Garland were healthy and playing at an MVP level, selling a trade for a 36-year-old James Harden would have been nearly impossible. The backlash would have been immediate. But an injury-riddled Garland, suddenly the fit and redundancy arguments become a lot easier to sell to fans and ownership. It gave Kobe Altman a clean escape hatch. Cleveland could flip the narrative to a win-now move without looking like they were panicking or giving up on a homegrown all-star. No mutiny, no outrage, just smart timing. So when Rich Paul talked about foresight, it might not have been some master chess move. It may have been the simple realization that Garland's body and Cleveland's timeline were drifting apart, and that moving him now was the only way to salvage value for the Clippers while clearing the runway for the Cavs' next phase. Reports confirm that Garland's camp actually blessed the trade to the Clippers, and that detail matters a lot. In today's player empowerment era, stars don't end up places they don't want to be, period. So the fact that Clutch helped steer Garland to Los Angeles, a major market where he can rebuild his value away from Donovan Mitchell's shadow, tells you this wasn't random. This was transactional. Paul took care of Garland by getting him to LA. In return, Garland quietly vacated the premises in Cleveland. That blessing also points to something bigger happening behind the scenes. This goes beyond standard front office negotiations. It suggests coordination, a quid pro quo. The Cavs send Garland to his preferred destination, and Clutch helps ensure a smooth transition of power in Cleveland, while conveniently keeping the door open for future Clutch clients. You know who I'm talking about. Now, while the Garland move grabbed the headlines, the real sleeper move came right after, the DeAndre Hunter dump. Hunter had just been acquired, but it clearly wasn't working. And more importantly, he was locked into long-term money, roughly $23 million per year. The Cavaliers flipped him for Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis, an expiring contract and a low-cost piece. That swap quietly created around $50 million in future cap flexibility compared to where the Cavs were headed. And let me be clear, you do not dump a starting caliber wing for a backup point guard unless you're clearing money for something or someone specific. When you line this up with the Garland situation and the broader league movement happening at the same time, the picture sharpens fast. Cleveland is liquidating long-term salary. They're stripping the roster down to its core, Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, and positioning themselves for a maximum level arrival. Everyone else became flexible or expendable. That's not rebuilding, that's preloading. This isn't randomness, this is preparation. The James Harden acquisition is the bridge between Cleveland's development era and what clearly looks like a super team era. Now, let's be real. At 36 years old, this isn't Houston era MVP chasing James Harden anymore. But don't get it twisted. He's still an elite offensive engine. We're talking over 25 points a night, 8+ assists, and complete control of the game's tempo. And for the Cavaliers, Harden fixes a very specific problem immediately: redundancy. Unlike Garland, Harden brings size, 6 feet 5 inches, strong frame, and he's comfortable slowing the game down. He thrives in the half court, which actually complements Donovan Mitchell's explosive downhill style instead of overlapping it. This is also not Harden's first rodeo. He's played next to ball-dominant stars his entire career. Chris Paul, Westbrook, KD, Kyrie. What you're getting now is Harden in full point guard mode, reading defenses, dictating pace, and making life easier for everyone else on the floor. This move isn't about nostalgia, it's about fit, and more importantly, it's about timing. The most important part of the James Harden move isn't even on the court, it's the contract. Harden holds a player option for the 2026 to 27 season worth roughly $42 million, and that single detail is the skeleton key to a potential LeBron James acquisition. Let me walk you through why. Scenario A, the opt-out. Harden declines the option and re-signs on a longer deal at a lower annual number, say 3 years for $90 million. That immediately drops his cap hit from $42 million to about $30 million, creating roughly $12 million in instant flexibility. Scenario B, the clean exit. If this experiment doesn't work, Harden becomes an expiring contract. The Cavs walk away with zero long-term damage. And remember, Garland's money is already off the books. That alone is a win. Scenario C, the cap hold play. This is the big one. Cleveland keeps Harden's bird rights, uses the cap space created by the Garland and Hunter moves to sign LeBron first, and then goes over the cap to re-sign Harden afterward. That move, impossible without Harden's contract structure. This kind of flexibility simply didn't exist with Darius Garland. He was locked into a rising scale deal with no off-ramp, no renegotiation lever, no escape hatch. Harden changes everything. His deal gives the Cavaliers the ability to manipulate the cap in July 2026 in ways that were mathematically impossible just months earlier. This isn't roster tinkering. This is long game engineering. Donovan Mitchell's role in all of this cannot be overstated. Mitchell pushed the front office to upgrade the roster. He knows exactly how narrow championship windows are, and he knows his window is right now. And when you zoom out, that's the trifecta. Mitchell, the prime scorer, Harden, the veteran orchestrator, LeBron, the king. By landing Harden, Kobe Altman sent a very loud message, not just to Mitchell, but to LeBron too. This franchise is done waiting. They're done developing. They're serious about contending. This wasn't a desperation move. It was a good faith deposit on the summer of 2026, and everyone involved knows exactly what that means. James Harden's exit from the Clippers was labeled a business decision. He publicly denied asking for a trade, and yet the move happened fast, very fast, and that matters because it tells you there was narrative control at play. Harden, just like LeBron, understands leverage, especially when you're on short-term deals. He doesn't move randomly. He moves when he sees the ceiling of a situation, when there's nothing left to squeeze out of it. So ask yourself this: why does a player of Harden's stature willingly come to Cleveland, a market he has zero historical ties to, in the middle of February? Stars don't do that just to play out the string. They do it because they've been sold a vision. Harden didn't come to Cleveland for a soft landing. He came because he knows what's being built, and everything about the timing, the contracts, and the roster movement points to the same destination: a big three, maybe even a big four, with LeBron James at the center of it. Because here's the key part: the NBA salary cap in 2026 is projected to be around $170 million. If Cleveland clears the right holds, uses Harden's bird rights correctly, and Harden cooperates on the number, they can open a LeBron slot. And no, that doesn't mean $52 million. LeBron is fully aware of the market realities. His number in Cleveland would not be close to his current salary. A third stint in Cleveland, chasing a fifth ring to close the book on his career, he fulfilled the promise in 2016. Coming back now with the ready-made super team completes the story. So the big question is, how does an agent like Rich Paul tell an owner what to do? The answer is simple. The NBA isn't a team-driven league anymore. It's a star-driven league. And the asset, the player, is now more valuable than the infrastructure, the franchise itself. Now let's talk about the uncomfortable part, the shadow GM reality. Those podcast comments revealed something important. Rich Paul didn't just advise, he directed. He evaluated the talent and decided Garland and Mitchell didn't fit. He set the timeline. This is your last year. He helped coordinate the trade destination and the timing. So when people ask, what the hell is going on in Cleveland? The answer is this: you're watching a calculated, high-stakes demolition and reconstruction project. Garland and Mitchell overlapped. Harden, Mitchell, and LeBron interlock. The script is written. Cleveland is just waiting for the credits to roll in 2027. Like, subscribe, share, and maybe even hype the video. Let me know in the comments if you agree that a super team is being formed in Cleveland. Thanks for watching.